How many times did I try to quit gambling and then miserably fail and end up going back to it? Let me ask you this question. What have you tried doing to actually stop gambling? Because I thought I had tried everything. I tried doing the self exclusions, I tried limiting myself on the books, I tried running away from it and hiding it, deleting the apps. I tried just about everything that I could think of. But as it would turn out, I actually tried almost nothing. Today, I'm going to tell you what it actually took for me to quit gambling because I kept going back to it no matter what I did. I finally figured out what works for me in my recovery journey, and I'm going to share that with you. Now, you don't have to be addicted to gambling to be here. You might just be someone who wants to learn more about it because for a very long time I couldn't admit that I had a problem, but it was always sneaking up on me, and it was always something that was going to eventually make me suffer the consequences. But what I'll tell you is, again, not everyone's going to get addicted to gambling, but anyone can. So maybe you take this information and you share it with someone that you're worried about or concerned about. It doesn't necessarily have to mean that you are the one with a problem. Now, what can you do to stop gambling? Let's dive right into it. My name is Rob, and I'm a recovering compulsive gambler. I made my last bet on November the 12th of 2022, and now I've made it my personal mission to create content on recovering from a gambling addiction and telling you more about the truth of gambling each and every day. So if you want to learn more about how to leave the chaos of gambling behind, smash that subscribe button and stay up to date on the content that I release here. You tried everything to stop. You're not gambling for today. You're feeling good about it, but then those temptations start to creep up on you. People have this idea that the one way they need to quit gambling addiction is to just ignore it, delete it, and leave everything behind. But that only works for so long. We're living in a society now where no matter where you look, someone's trying to sell you something. And that could be on a billboard telling you that, hey, you're going to be the next big winner. Or it could be on a TV commercial of your favorite sporting event telling you, hey, sign up and get $200 free on our book. It's all a marketing ploy, and it's hard to avoid. They do a very good job with it, and they put a lot of money into it. So it's difficult to come to terms with the fact that, hey, I'm not going to be able to get away from this, which is why you need to be doing more than just ignoring it. There's 4 things that I focus on to really recover from a gambling problem. And you can apply these to any addiction, including alcohol use disorder, drug use disorders, or any kind of addiction, guys. Whether it's nicotine, THC, it doesn't matter. It's all the same concepts. The 4 things that you need to focus on are what I'm going to be diving into over the next few minutes. So I hope that you stick around until the end of the video, because if you skip any of these 4 things, you're going to be putting yourself at a major disadvantage in terms of trying to recover from your addiction. The very first thing that you can focus on is to find alternatives for your time. I thought that if I just ignored gambling, that would be enough. But what I actually needed to do was find something to channel my time and energy into that I could feel good about my days, feel productive, and move in the right direction. So for me, it turned out that making these videos was something I really enjoyed doing. Now, for you, it might not be doing that. Maybe for you, it's going back to something you liked to do before you started gambling. I don't know, drawing, artistry, cooking. I don't know what it is for you. You have to decide that. But for me, it was always this feeling that I wanted to educate, that I wanted to share my experiences with others. And I'm doing that right now. I'm not a teacher by any means, but I always thought that, hey, maybe I have this ability to translate what I'm saying into some tangible ideas. And if you can use them, that would make me really happy. Now, for you, it could be something different. Maybe you're interested in painting, cooking, writing, reading. I don't know what it is, but you have to get out there and try something. Because if you're just going to try to ignore the problem, it's eventually going to catch up to you. The second thing that you can focus on is finding a way to limit your access to the money that's going to tempt you back into gambling. Now, for me, this meant having my family manage my finances, which is not something that you really want to do as a young person or as a gambling addict, because it's a huge ego hit, right? Why do I have to have my family manage my finances? Why can't I figure this out on my own? But one thing that we think with a gambling problem is like we want to have access to everything. We want to keep it within our control and we want to move forward. But we've tried that so many times. I've probably tried it 100 times. That's why the name of this video is, it took me 101 tries to quit gambling. And it's because no matter what we're trying to do, it's going to eventually get to the point where the temptation is too great and we eventually cave. And it's not a matter of willpower or self-control. It's a chemical imbalance in our brains that has to get fixed with time away from gambling. So if we're not able to take that time away from gambling, what are we doing? We're just going to end up running in circles, and the cycle is going to keep repeating itself. So one way that you can break that cycle is to get rid of the fuel for continuing to be in action. And for us, that is the money that allows us to make the next bet, that allows us to place the next wager. And once we're able to separate ourselves from that money, it becomes easier to stay away because the temptations decrease. When you don't have access to something and it's more difficult to get to, that is the number one thing you can do to break a bad habit. You can literally make it as difficult as possible. And it's always going to be possible. Don't kid yourself. But by stepping away from it, by making it further away from you, you actually get the chance to make a better decision. And that's why it's so important to limit your access to that money. Now, it might not be feasible for you to have your family manage your finances. Maybe you don't live with your family. They might live across the world. But what you can do is implement some kind of bank transaction blocker at that point. Because in a lot of countries, specifically within Europe and in Australia, you can limit where you're allowed to spend the money in your account. And what's so important about that is that you could limit yourself from ATMs, that you could be withdrawing to get cash at the casino, or you could be limiting yourself on cryptocurrency sites where you're going to be buying the Bitcoin that you're going to fund your gambling accounts with. Make it as difficult as possible to access that money, or even think about spending it right away on something productive, like paying down debts or paying your rent early. Get rid of the temptations. Space yourself out. That's what's so important here. Next, the third thing that you can focus on to recover from a gambling addiction is to find a way to separate yourself from the gambling itself. Now, that's easier said than done, right? But there's things like self-exclusions where you can tell the casino you do not want to play here anymore. Please ban me from playing here. Then you can get something like a gambling blocker, like a gam ban or a gam stop. These things really help to separate you from the action by making it really difficult again. The idea here is that if we make things more difficult for ourselves to access while continuously working on our character, we're going to eventually feel those urges subside and start to feel better about the recovery process in general. Because once we've gotten to a point where we're not wanting to gamble so much every day, then the temptations don't hit us as hard. And we're able to actually go about our day without stressing out, which is really, really tough in the beginning because we're still craving that action that we were just feeling a few days before. But if you're just going to try to ignore it, it's not going to work. You have to be intentional about your recovery, and separating yourself from the gambling, making it as difficult as possible to access, is one of the things that's within your control. If we focus on what's within our control, we can actually make a tangible change in our lives that we have control over. As gambling addicts, something that we're constantly seeking is this sense of control. And we think that we get it by choosing which games to bet on, by changing our bet frequency, our betting patterns, finding some kind of strategy. But none of that's actual control. It's false sense of control that the casinos harp on to keep you coming back for more. You actually don't have control over anything that you're doing when you're gambling, because as soon as you place that bet, it's out of your hands. You can't control whether the coach of the team is going to take out their star player. You can't control if a player is going to end up breaking their ankle and then scoring under on their point total. It's completely out of your control. But in the recovery process, you can regain that control. You can take agency over your life again and move forward in the right direction. That's why it's important to separate yourself from the gambling, because it gives you that sense of power, that sense of control that you've been craving all along. The fourth thing that I'm going to talk about, and the last thing you should focus on in your recovery journey, is to find a support group. It is really, really important to have other people to talk to who have the same issue as you. Because once you learn what works for them in terms of coping mechanisms, in terms of handling urges, you can apply those strategies to your own recovery. I am not making up the things that I talk about here on my account. I'm sharing what's actually been working for me, and I learned all of it by going to group meetings, by doing research, and going to counseling sessions. It might take professional help for you, it might not, but you have to get out there and give something a try, because thinking you can do it all on your own is exactly what will send you back to gambling. I tried to quit gambling hundreds of times. Let's call it 100 for convenience sake. But it took me the 101st try before I really got it right, because that's the point where I started to trust people external to myself. We need a support system in the recovery process, or we're fighting a losing battle. We have to have someone that we can go to when things get tough, that we can bounce ideas off of, and we can hear what works for them. When you do that, you put yourself in a really strong position to recover from a gambling addiction or any addiction that you might be facing. And there you have it. Those are 4 things that you can focus on to burst through that wall and start to actually recover from your addiction. It took me hundreds of tries, as I've mentioned throughout this video, before things finally started to click. And they started to click when I started doing something different. If you've been struggling, if you feel like you've tried everything, just know that you have not tried everything that's out there to quit. You will be able to live a happier and healthier life. But you have to do something different than what you've done before if you want a different result. It's pretty insane to think that doing the same thing over and over again is going to lead to a different outcome. But if you're able to employ these 4 steps, and some of the other things that I talk about here on my account, I truly believe that you can recover and you can live a better life. All of that happens one day at a time.